pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. First thing I'd like to do is go roll call. Mr. Young, are you here?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Young is here. Mr. Mandel? Mr. Mandel?
Present.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Sweeney?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Dell? Mr. Dell? Okay, Mr. Dell, as of right now, is not here. Mr. Andrews?
Present, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCory?
Here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bond?
Here.
Thank you very much. Okay, first item on the agenda is the Dominican College Athletic Complex Site Plan, PB 20-57.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
before we move forward, can I remind everybody, including the board members and the neighbors and the public who have called in, to mute your connection, your phone or your computer, and the chairman will address you. Please do not interrupt until you are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slavin. Okay, the applicant had postponed the December 9th meeting, so I'm going to be adding the December 9th issues and the January 27th. Okay, Jane Slavin, December 9th. She has 10 items. Jane Slavin, January 25th. 6 items. Okay, Bruce Peters, Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, December 8th. He has 8 items. Okay, Bruce Peters, January 26th. He has 16 items. I want to stop right now on this page. And item number 1, the applicant is hereby advised and remind that the Watercourse diversion permit must be obtained prior to receiving preliminary application for this proposed project. This is because the design and the construction of the proposed tract is directly dependent on the proposed watercourse diversion and enclosure. The application must be made to the Town of Orangetown Town Board. Copies of all correspondence related to this issue shall be sent to this department and the Planning Board. I want to discuss that just for a moment. Looking at the plans, and I've talked to Ms. Slavin about it, and the watercourse proposal diversion is quite minimal. And I would just like the board members to consider that possibly, I'm not saying anything, but possibly if we were allowing this applicant to continue, and as a condition that they go to the town board for the permit prior to going any further, that if the town board for some reason does not give the permit or makes changes, that they would have to come back to us. If there were no changes, being that I believe it's minimal, then I think that they should be allowed. I don't know if the building department or the town attorney have anything else to add to that, or if I'm just out of order on that in that respect to that. Does Deputy Town Attorney have anything to say on that?
It would be my position that that is up to the building inspector, and if Ms. Slavin finds that that's acceptable to the town attorney's office as well.
Okay, Ms. Slavin, do you have any comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, there has been precedent set in the past that applications have received preliminary approval with that condition. If the board sees fit to move forward with granting preliminary, the applicant would then be required to file for the stream diversion permit and approval from the town board. If the town board does not approve it, they would have to come up with another solution and come back to the planning board. So if anything was to deviate from any approval that you may grant this evening, they would have to come back to amend that approval. If the board is not comfortable with granting preliminary this evening, you can advise the client that they need to then go to the town board for the stream diversion permit prior to coming back to the board for preliminary.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to read the rest of the consultants' reports in, and then we'll talk to the board members and get their opinion on what they want to do with that. Okay. Booker Engineering. They have two. First one was December 8th, and they granted approval subject to 10 conditions. The new one is January 26th. And the applicant has provided significant information to demonstrate that potential significant adverse impacts with respect to drainage can be mitigated. Therefore, we recommend the Dominican College Athletics Complex site plan be approved for drainage subject to the above project comments, of which there are 5. Rockland County Planning, November 18, they have 10. Rockland County Sewer District Number 1, December 2nd, have 2. I have a note from the Palisades Interstate Park Commission saying they consent to the Orangetown Planning Board serving as lead agent. I also have a note from the Rockland County Planning Department, the town board being lead agent. I have a note from the Orangetown ZBA saying no further correspondence for the site is to be sent to this agency. I have another one from Palisades Interstate Park Commission. Just main comments. They have no comments at this time. I have a letter from a James. Oh man, am I going to be in all kinds of trouble on this? NAWOICHYK. James, I apologize. Okay, we have your letter dated December 9th. I have another letter from a Matt Duffy dated December 8th. I have a letter from Hugh Duffy, December 8th. I have a letter from Nor Salik, December 8th. I have a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Badillo, dated December 7th. I have a letter from Salvatore and Tina Ademo, dated January 26th. It's when the town received, dated January 26th. I have a letter from a Matthew Broderick, Esquire. I don't see a date on that. I'm sorry, there's no date on that. I have a letter, again, from Salvatore and Tina Ademo. I have a correspondence from H2M Architects and Engineering dated January 11th. I have a letter from Soil Mechanics Drilling Corporation, July 14th. And I think that's all. Cheryl, have I missed anything?
Did you read a letter from Matthew Broderick?
I made notation of it.
Okay, and Kenneth McCloskey?
Okay, Matthew Broderick, I got. Wait a minute. Excuse me for a moment. Want to make sure everything is put in. I might not have that McCloskey letter.
December 5th.
I got Broadwick. And this is, no, I don't have that other one, sure. Oh, yes, I take it back. Please forgive me. Kenneth McCloskey,
Okay.
December 5th.
And James Noracek, December 9th. I'm sorry, I pronounced your name wrong.
No, that's all I have, Cheryl.
Okay, so those last three.
Okay, let me go into what you sent me. I'm sorry, I got a whole bunch of stuff here. Padillo, Duffy. Sanko. Jim Walker. No, I don't have it, Cheryl. I'm sorry. Would you make note of that, please?
Yes, I have them. Okay.
Thank you very, very much. Okay. Let me put it up to the board now. And
Excuse me, can I just, there was one that we sent also, the Patricia and Michael McNamee dated December 9th.
Okay,
We
ma'am.
sent that as well.
Okay,
ma'am,
during the public session, you can, please do not interrupt. During the public session, the chairman will ask for any comments and we can address any outstanding items.
thank you, ma'am. Okay. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did the applicant or the applicant's representatives speak to this project yet?
You're breaking up. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, did the applicant speak regarding this project yet?
No, I'm sorry. I kind of went out of order. Let me have them make their comments. Okay. I'm just sorry because I just wanted to get all that stuff read in. So can the applicant please go ahead and make an opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've unmuted myself with your permission.
Yes.
My name is Brian Quinn. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Dominican College. I'm an attorney with the firm of Blakely, Platt and Schmidt, 1 North Lexington Avenue, White Plains, New York. Also on this meeting this evening is my partner, Lino Sciaretta, of the same firm. And with your permission, I'll introduce a number of people who may be speaking this evening, depending upon the comments and the questions that we receive. These would include Sister Kathleen Sullivan of Dominican College, Sister Mary Eileen O'Brien, the president of Dominican College. We also have John Burke, who's an employee of Dominican College. We also have Joe Corliss, our outside engineer. We have John Solinsky, who is with Land Tech, and Steve Kuzmiskis, who's with Land Tech. Lantec is a firm that specializes in the installation of turf fields, which is what most of this plan is all about. You may be familiar with them because they've done other work in the town of Orangetown. Specifically, they did the work over at the New York City Football Club facility on Old Orangeburg Road in Orangeburg, New York. We also have Matt Molen from H2M, who is a civil engineer. We also have Robert Wildermuth, who's an architect with H2M. And we also have David Koulis, who is with Musco Lighting, the people who would be installing the lighting fixtures over there. So I think I got everybody. It's a long list. There are several other people here I can see from the college who are also on the call this evening, but I don't anticipate them speaking unless something specific comes up. I appreciate your having read the correspondence in. One thing I did notice was I know that the name is pronounced Navoychik. It's James Navoychik. He's one of the neighbors. We've met him before. And just as an aside, I'd like to take a minute just to mention that I recently saw that his dad, Chet Navoychik, had passed away in the last few days. I knew Chet from Pearl River. He was really a pillar of the community, both at Knights of Columbus, and I encountered him from the extensive work he did with the Boy Scouts, including my 3 boys who were in Boy Scouts at one time or another. So, Jim, I was very sorry to see of your dad's passing.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Yes. This is an application for, it's really an upgrade to an existing field over at Dominican College. Dominican College has utilized that field for over 40 years. It's a soccer and it's a lacrosse field mostly. And the proposal is to convert the existing grass field over there to a more appropriate turf field. Typical of what's in existence for most of the high schools in this county. There will be an addition of a track around the field itself. There will be some lighting. There will be a small bleacher, approximately 250 seats, which is more than enough. They usually have only 30 or 40 people at their games, but family members come, and if they get into the playoffs, often that may be increased. But there will also be a press box and obviously drainage facilities to make sure that we comply with all of the town and county and state drainage codes with respect to the new construction. I'll turn it over to the people at H2M or Lantec. Is there anything else that I missed as far as additions to be made to the existing field over there?
No, Mr. Quinn. This is John Solinsky from the Lantec Group. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Lantec. With me on the call, I have Steve Kosmiskas, who is our Regional Manager. As Mr. Quinn had stated, we have familiarity with working in this region. We work up and down the coast of the United States, primarily on the East Coast. Our office is based out of Bay Shore, New York. And the application that's put forward, as Mr. Quinn has stated, is an upgrade to the existing facilities. We have engaged H2M architects who we've done many facilities with throughout the tri-state area. And we joined the call today to hopefully offer any support that's needed from the contractor side. Thank you.
You're not back on. You muted yourself and you can turn yourself back on.
I'm sorry.
Now we can hear you.
Good. Every one of these programs is slightly different, so. But in any event, Mr. Chair, I heard your comments with respect to Mr. Peters' comments about obtaining the stream diversion. And I know I discussed this with my partner, Mr. Sharetta, who's also on the call. Lena, you recently had a stream diversion permit in one of your applications before the planning board. Could you explain to the planning board how that was conducted.
Sure. No, consistent. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, town council, staff, Lino Sharetta, Blakely, Platt, and Schmidt. Yes, I did have last year have to apply for a Chapter 41 watercourse diversion. And as was stated by the chair and the building inspector, we had an application and we obtained preliminary approval first. And then after we obtained preliminary, we went to the town board for the water diversion permit, but then had to come back to the planning board for final. So that's consistent with what I heard, and that's what the board has done prior. So it's consistent with its precedent. And again, I know I heard it tonight, so I just wanted to reiterate the board and made me go through the same process for a prior application in Pro River not too long ago. So thank you.
Yeah, that seems like it makes perfect sense. We understand that if preliminary approval, is received, then certainly that would be a condition before we move forward. That would be the next step, is to go to the town board to get the stream diversion permit. I believe Sister Kathleen Sullivan wanted to make just some brief opening statements about the order, about the property itself that they've owned for many years, and also about the college. Sister, would you like to say something?
Yes, I'd be happy to just give a little background for our proposal today, this evening. The property we are discussing has been owned by the Sisters of St. Dominic since they began their ministry here in Blauvelt in 1878, caring for neglected children. Dominican College, which began its mission here in Orangetown in 1952, and as you all know, is not a sports organization, but an institution of higher learning, that has been preparing our students for careers in fields that help to serve our community and beyond our community, in healthcare and nursing and occupational therapy and physical therapy, in education on both the undergraduate and graduate level, in the sciences, in social work, in many business fields, as well as in tech fields. The sports program we offer is a part of our educational environment that prepares people for healthy living. The property we are discussing today had been rented from the sisters for the college's sports for about 40 years and was used by our men and women's sports teams in soccer and in lacrosse. The property was purchased from the sisters by the college in 2016, and the college's sports programs have grown to include 17 different teams, including track and field. And with the college's decision to upgrade the property and construct a turf field, it was also decided to accommodate our track and field program by developing a 6-lane track surrounding the turf field. We know you understand how important it is to offer students the opportunities they need to take on preparation for their lives, and how important sports activities are for preparing for healthy living. Our Land Tech representative, John Solinsky, will talk about the plans for the field that are so needed for a safe and well-regarded venue for our students. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think John and myself have kind of explained in broad strokes the project. I'm very interested in hearing any comments or questions that the board may have, and we're also very interested in hearing any comments, questions that our neighbors may have as well too. So I guess that would conclude our opening statement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let me go. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Quinn, President O'Brien, for the clarifications there. I did have interest in the watercourse diversion. I think that's been cleared up, that the applicant's going to have to go back to the town for a permit on that. I was curious because we don't see that too often, that type of requirement. I am concerned with the screening with the neighbors to the west, I guess it would be, of the track, where most of the residential occupants will be. It's a nuisance. I understand that with the lights and potential noise. What kind of operation are we talking about? Is it a couple days a week? For how late at night and such? So I look forward to hearing what the residents have to say as well. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mandel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have several questions. First, regarding the short EAF that was for the short environmental assessment form. On page 2, number 8, you checked no for the substantial increase in traffic. If you will be renting out the facility to other organizations, camps, and outside teams, do you know how many rentals you anticipate per week on that? And what kind of traffic do you anticipate with it?
Mr. Mandel, if you'd like, we can respond item by item, or we could make a presentation towards the end, whatever is your preference. And I could
Well, I
also
prefer
respond to
to-
Mr. Young's question.
Yeah, before for myself, I would prefer to get the answers as I go.
Okay, yes. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
you're right. I think we should stay with the protocol and have all the answers done at one time so there doesn't come out of control.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Mandel, why don't you give them a list of questions you want, and then when you're done, he'll
Okay, all right, Mr. Chairman, I will, but I expect them all to be answered. If they're not, I'll cut back in at the end to make sure that I get the answers. Okay,
Yes,
number
sir.
2. On page 2, number 10 of the same EAF, you wrote the proposed action does not create a water demand. Now, I think you're building a synthetic turf field, if I'm correct, according to that. That's not real grass, it's synthetic. How do you propose to cool the field in the summer when temperatures can rise above 120 degrees, creating a health hazard for players? I know in the case of the OMM soccer fields at the Orangetown Recreational Center, which you mentioned before, they have a water cooling system. So I'd like to know on that. On 6A, on the same EAF, it asks if the action is consistent with the predominant character of the existing built or natural environment. Now, this sports field may fit the character of a college campus setting, but it does not, in my opinion, fit the residential character of the existing built neighborhood, which is borders the field, which is residential. What was the rationale for the answer for that question? Okay. Rockland County Planning number 6 states the lighting plan showing locations at the property line to be less than 0.1 candle lumens. Your plan does not comply. It does not fully delineate the property boundary line. It appears there are 3 locations on the south side with lumens at 0.1, not less than as required. Could you clarify, and does this plan include both the tower and security lighting, or is it just the tower or just the security lighting? Okay. The distances to the neighboring residential properties are 65 feet on the south side and 50 on the west side. The building department number 4 questions the distances supplied. What are the exact measurements from the scoreboard and track to the property line, not the fence line? Okay, comments from DEME dated 1/26/21, which supersedes the 12/7/20 comment letter, raises several questions. DM1, which you answered before about the water diversion. Thank you for that answer. Number 2, 2A, you have spoken to DME regarding the change in the detention system from underground to above ground as requested. Have you spoken to them about that? Have they agreed to retaining the underground detention system, or are you going to put above ground? Number 16 on the DEME, this desk, have you submitted the applications to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Army Corps of Engineers, and the Rockland County Drainage Agency? And one last item with DEME. Have you discussed whether your perk tests, which were conducted without a town representative present, will be acceptable, or will they be redone in the spring? I'd like to know the answer to that. The project narrative, okay. Facility operation, please supply the following information which is not specified: the days of operation, the months of operation, The hours of operation, what's the earliest starting time? What's the latest ending time at night? How many Dominican College teams will be using the field? Anticipated number of practices, anticipated number of games. Will the above hours of operation parameters be applicable to rental organizations, camps, and outside teams? We plan to install a PA system, which you state will only be used for official college games and events. M2H2M Architects report dated 1/11/21, page 2, number 7. Official college games limited to Dominican College, or does it include other games played by other colleges who rent the field for official games? Will that PA system be used? Rockland County Planning number 8. What are the hours of operation? And is there a PM termination even if a game continues past the reasonable hour? Okay, you discussed, there was a discussion with the residents in the area regarding rentals of the property. Are these rental sources of income for the college, which in my opinion is a commercial enterprise in an R40 zone? Could you please respond to that? And and that's all I have at this time. I'm waiting for additional. Hopefully you can answer all these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Chairman, if you could address Mr. Sweeney next, please.
Okay. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt earlier. I wanted to give her a chance to speak. I need to recuse myself from any further participation in this proposal due to a past relationship with this applicant.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Dell here yet? No, not hearing Mr. Dell. Okay, Mr. Andrews.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. I've been here.
Questions or comments on this application?
Mr. Dell is here.
Oh, we're okay, Mr. Dell.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say that I've known the college for many years. I actually taught there some years ago, about 15, 20 years ago. I think they're a fine organization and they make wonderful contributions, not just to our community, but to our state and our culture at large. And I think they're to be congratulated how they're able to have this evolve from what it started when I first knew it to what it is now. And it certainly is very, very positive addition to our community. Now, I'd like to say that the format that we're using now, where all of our questions get answered, I don't know if the applicant can get all these questions answered, rather than having a usual dialogue, somewhat cumbersome, to say the least. I would prefer, of course, that we could do it the other way. It's obviously a decision that you make yourself, sir, as chairman. I have not heard any presentation formally about the lighting in terms of the heights of the, how high everything is proposed, where it's proposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. That to me is a very critical series of points that have to be clarified. Second, this is what I often refer to in meetings as a campus type setting. And as a campus type setting, normal rules don't usually apply. However, this is on the perimeter of the campus setting. We've had other fields that we've looked at recently, some of them approaching scale, others far less. But for example, even the Kaufman campground fields we looked at, we made sure they had quite a bit of setback. Now, in all fairness to the applicant, the proposed field is approximately 8 to 10 feet lower than the contiguous property owners to the west. However, there are a number of things which I think could be done to this property to substantially improve this plan. My first suggestion is that the entire track area can be moved in an easterly direction 10 to 20 feet. That would give substantial extra protection, and not just in terms of distance, but in terms of a sound barrier to the properties to the west. I also would propose that you use a retaining wall approximately 4 feet high or thereabouts. The applicant's engineer would be able, obviously, to determine this, and that would further decrease the amount of site disturbance. In addition to this, I'd like to know a lot of the questions that Mr. Mandel asked, and it just seems that a long form EAF would be more appropriate for this type of application. But right now, from the information I have on the plans and the information I've received from the applicants, I'd be hard pressed to make any determination on this because there are so many unknowns. And I wish that we could have a dialogue with them to clarify some of these, at least before we go to the public portion of the meeting. Overall, sir, I think it's a little close to the property line. I wonder its appropriateness in this location, but I depend, of course, on the details. And you know what they say about the details. So, being said, I will hold off further comments till I hear from the other board members and also to eventually from the public. But I first would like to have a good idea of exactly what the applicant is proposing other than the plans that we've been given here. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Mandel and Mr. Dell had numerous questions which covered a lot of my questions. I have, right now, there's one question I have about the lighting. Everybody has said that these lights are going to be 80 feet tall. I'd like to know if that's true and why they have to be 80 feet tall. This looks like it's going to be a soccer field. I don't think it's going to be played football or baseball on this field. If the lighting's going to be 80 feet tall, I can't understand why that would be the case for this type of field. So that's one of my concerns, and most of the other concerns that I had was covered by Mr. Dell and Mr. Mandel, and I await for the public to hear from the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCrory.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree with the questions that were asked prior, and also agree that this is an unusual format where our questions are answered at the end. I haven't been in a meeting where that has happened. Usually there's a little dialogue back and forth where the applicant answers our questions right away so we get a better idea what's going on. But if this is how we're going to do it, that's how we're going to do it. All right, I have lots of questions about this. Looking at the project, it's pretty clear that this plan will have a big impact on the surrounding properties. And what was mentioned earlier, the lighting, the PA system, hours of operation, there's so many unknowns that just with what I got so far, you really can't make a determination tonight, you know? And something that wasn't mentioned that I'll bring up is the tree removal. I don't see how many trees on their plan is part of the removal. On their plan, they have a section, they label it debris removal. Anybody has gone and stood in a backyard of one of the properties would see it's not brush. I'm sorry, I meant brush removal. It's not brush removal. These are big mature trees that are in that buffer zone that gives the neighbors some kind of screening currently. And to consider that brush removal, it's not right. I'd like to see a plan that describes exactly how many trees they are removing, and that's not listed on any of the plans I saw. Just to move on, I know my questions aren't going to be answered until after. And I understand why the college wants to do this. I saw the video. They have a YouTube video, Dirt to Turf. And, it brings up a good point about they want to draw athletes. It's good for the school, but it's just a terrible location for this. Residential on the west side, residential on the south side. It's just, and then when the college experience is over for these kids, when the games are over, when the 4 years are over, the neighbors are still stuck with this big sports complex in their backyard. So I understand why you're doing it, but just a terrible location. And another comment, I can't believe that this is actually allowed in an R40 residential zone. And almost has the same setbacks as if this was a single family house. It's kind of boggles my mind that a stadium with a press box, bleachers, scoreboard, 80-foot lights can be built and still have the same setbacks as if this was a single-family house. And I talked to the neighbors, and we saw the emails. Nobody supports this in that neighborhood, and then the adjoining properties and the neighbors, as a whole over there. And they all agree will negatively affect the impact of their quality of life, their property values. There's no denying that. And one of the emails mentioned Chapter 21A. I'll get into that later with a couple of questions, but that gives our board a lot of protection for the neighbors, whether it's just nuances, screening, lighting. So there's a lot of questions here, and I'll reserve more questions to the end to see how they answer it. But I have a lot of doubts about this project as presented tonight. So thank you, Chairman. Those are my comments, and I'll have more questions later.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bond.
Okay, yeah, I realize this has been a field probably that Dominican's been playing on probably for almost close to 50 years now, if not more. I understand that they want to improve it. They want to do the turf. It's always been a soccer field, probably lacrosse for quite some time, but they've had soccer forever. And they've always played back there. My biggest concern is the usage of the field. You know, I understand the college is going to use, but what I'm hearing tonight is people talking about renting the facility out. And, you know, what are the plans for that? I've been involved in this type of stuff before. I'm a member of the Pro School Board. We just put in a track in Pro River, but we don't rent it out. So it lessens the impact on the neighborhood. So, I mean, if this is going to be a revenue generator for the college, I got a lot of issues with it. If we're going to limit the operation to just the college use, and and have a schedule basically of when they plan on using it for games and how late they're going to practice there, I'm okay with it. But if you guys are going to rent this thing out to generate revenue to pay for this track, I have a lot of issues with that. So that's it for now.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'd like to have now is I'd like to have the applicant answer these questions from the board members before we get into the public session, because I have a feeling that these are the exact same questions that the public have. And I'd like to get these answers answered now so that the public will have an idea of what this is all about. So whoever from the applicant wants to start answering questions, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. I guess I'll start off. Although I didn't hear any comments from you, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to add to what we've already heard before.
No, I'm good right now. I reserve myself to later to make comments.
Okay, and I believe me, I was furiously writing, trying to make sure I kept track of all of the issues, particularly for Mr. Mandel, who was speaking kind of quickly. But I think the first thing, I guess, was raised by Mr. Young about the stream diversion. Could one of our engineers speak about that or elaborate on what was previously said about that? I noted that the building inspector, Ms. Slavin, said that it was a rather small, minimal diversion, but could somebody from H2M or Joe Corliss speak about that?
Yeah, this is Matt Molin from H2M Architects and Engineers. I'll address that. So there is a small intermittent stream on the southwest side of the proposed field, and we are looking to divert it slightly and put it through a small 3x5 box culvert to provide the sufficient room for the field. And what we're doing is we are restoring some of the banks with wetland vegetation. In accordance with New York State DEC requirements, we have submitted a permit application to DEC as well as Army Corps of Engineers for this work at this time, but that is currently pending.
Okay, and we would like to have the the back and forth with the board. I understand that I've heard what they've said. We'll be happy to do that. So, were there any other further questions about the stream diversion from any member of the board?
No, I believe not.
Okay. The next issue, and Mr. Young, I'm sorry, I started writing furiously when Mr. Mandel started, but I know you started with the stream. There were other issues I think that you raised though. Could I just hear those again?
Yes, Mr. Quinn, the berm or some sort of screening to the west, I'm very concerned of, and the lighting, which has been addressed by my fellow board members and such. So that's all I had.
Yes, okay. Yeah, as far as the berm and the landscape plan and what will be removed from the existing growth that's over there, H2M, would this be under your explanation, Mr. Wildenbooth? Landscape plan?
I believe Matt Mullen can talk about that, or I can. It's fine.
Yeah. So I'm unmuted. Yeah. Okay. It's Matt Mullen again. So we are doing some tree removal on the west side of the site, but we are proposing some additional vegetation to provide some further screening, which includes 3 white oak, which upon maturity are fairly large and can grow upwards of 80 to 100 feet, and some additional evergreen screening as well. And we're trying to minimize the removal of trees on the property line.
Yes, and could you speak to what else will be added as part of the landscape plan?
Yeah, so we have. Bear with me a second. I'm just pulling up our. Yeah, so white oak. Norway spruce, yes, and then we have wetland plantings along the proposed realignment of the intermittent stream.
Yes.
And the lights?
Well, I think that was a comment from the public. Was that?
I think Mr. Mandel has more questions that he'd like to answer.
Oh, yes, I know. No, but I think someone from the public spoke.
The public session is not open right now. This is just strictly answers between the board and the applicant.
Yes, and I understand, Mr. Warren, that the public will all have an opportunity to speak.
They most certainly will.
Yes, okay. And certainly, we're open. Part of the reason why we came to this meeting is because we wanted to hear what people had to say. We wanted to hear suggestions from the board. We wanted to hear the comments from the public. I'm writing as I'm speaking at the same time because we will have a discussion after this meeting back with our team at the college to consider all of the concerns raised by board members and by members of the public. And certainly Mr. Dell, we would consider a berm, if that can be managed over there with landscape to help with the screening. We can certainly consider a number of other items. As you know, Mr. Dell, it's often common for there to be a little bit of back and forth on landscape plans, and we remain open for suggestions to see what else we could do. Okay, I think if I can move on to Mr. Mandel's comments. He was looking at the EAF. He asked about the traffic and the number of people. And perhaps Mr. Burke of Dominican College, John, could you comment on average number of people who attend games for starters?
Thank you, Brian. Our attendance as obviously varies. We have soccer's played. Typically we have 40, 50 people there. Obviously there are a game a year that might be 75 to 100. Lacrosse, unfortunately, hasn't played on campus the last couple of years just because of the condition of the field. Their games, typically more the men will have 75 to 100, and the women unfortunately have a little less than that. Usually they're around 50 to 60.
Okay, so we really don't anticipate a large increase in the number of spectators attending games.
Let me just interject one question. One of the questions that I think Mr. Bond had brought up is that if you rent the fields out, or do you anticipate on renting the fields?
And yes, we can answer that. John, do you want to speak about proposed field rentals?
Yeah, we obviously up to this point, because the condition of the field, we really haven't rented outdoor facilities. We've certainly rented indoors. But looking at a calendar, to answer the question, I would say you look at August 15th through May 1st, which is typically our 2 academic semesters. And when we're in session, I think rental opportunities max would be 8 to 10 hours a week. When you go to May 1 through July, when we're not playing any games, our semester is over, potentially there could be 15 to 20 hours of rental.
Okay.
Can I ask Andrews, like a question here? If you're renting these fields out, who are you renting them out to? And are they going to have spectators at the periods of time that they're going to be rented? And how many spectators do you expect from the rentals?
All right, so you want me to answer that, Brian?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, obviously we know that there are a number of people interested in renting this facility. I think that's not a surprise in our county. Our goal would be to limit the number of organizations we'd rent to, just for our own sanity. So we'd like to have one group and limit that, because of course we're trying to limit hours. So as far as we haven't gotten as far as whether we'd want them to use our field for games. Right now, I think we're looking for just for them to have practices. I don't think we're looking for use for games. I think I'm hearing from people that they want facility for practice. So I can't answer that question at this point, because I don't see us having renting out to groups for them to have tournaments or outside games.
Hey, Tom, I just had a... sorry.
No, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, could you have me answer the question?
Are you talking about renting it on a
Wait.
Saturday?
Stop.
Saturday.
I got 2 people going on. Mr. Mandel?
Can we stay in order, of some sort of order or semblance going around instead of jumping around, so we can answer all the questions?
I was trying to get him to answer your question, sir.
He has answered all of my questions. You jumped to another place. We're not staying in some sort of order here. We should have answered the questions as we went along, as I thought we should have done. And just to comment on what a couple of the other members of the board said when they're talking about the environmental impact study. If you look at the New York State DEC CEQA review, 6 NYCRR, effective 1/1/19, part 617, it really calls for a full environmental impact study, because it does create a negative impact on the community and it changes the character of the community and neighborhood. That's just the background on that. But I asked a group of questions and we're jumping around, and I'd like the answers to the questions so that I can at least follow along. And we seem to be going out of order, which if that was the case in the first place, why bother asking the questions? Thank you.
Mr. Mandel, I'm ready to move back to your comments. I was responding to a comment from one of the other board members, or a question, but the next one that I had from you is about water demand. You said that the EAF had indicated no water demand, and you asked about the heat of the field during the summer, and could somebody from Land Tech answer that question for Mr. Mandel?
Sure, Mr. Quinn. So based on extensive research, and I know you mentioned other facilities in the area that are extremely hot, artificial turf fields do get warmer than natural grass fields. But in our experience in building thousands of facilities and fields and working with many different manufacturers, the artificial turf surfaces do not need to be cooled. Yes, they are warmer, and that is a known fact, but there's plenty of research and data out there that proves that the fields are playable. In our experience, adding water to a field and introducing a cooling system increases the humidity index at the athlete's playing level, which actually causes more of an issue than the heat. So I hope that answers your question, but there's plenty of documentation that can be delivered that cooling the fields is not necessary.
I'd like to get that from you because I was involved with OMM when they set up their fields, and there was extensive research on the heat of the field, especially when it goes above 120 degrees.
We can gather that data.
Okay.
Okay.
You answering Mr. Mandel's questions?
Yes, we are. Yeah, so Mr. Selinsky, if you could, I guess, supply some information with respect to heat of the field, and I guess we're talking about really the middle of the summer when it would get potentially that warm. Mr. Mandel, I think you also made a comment about 6A on the short form EAF about the character. This is an existing field right now. It has been utilized as an existing field for over 40 years. So I would respectfully submit that this is a continuing use. It's by way of an upgrade, and I don't believe it really does change the character of the neighborhood from what is there now. You also asked about some information about the lighting, and we do have, I believe, Mr. David Koulis from Musco Lighting. David, could you respond to questions, about the lighting? First, Mr. Mandel, which I think was very specific about the 0.1 lumens on the property, and perhaps also explain the lighting system since other board members had questions about the lighting.
Do we have somebody who's going to answer that question, please?
Matt, if you could jump in to answer that question. I think we lost David online here.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm just going to try to share my screen. I have the site Photometrics here. I think I have to ask to be made the presenter to share a screen.
Okay, you're the presenter.
Okay, so I guess I can. Right. Is that visible?
Yes.
It is visible. Okay. So what you're seeing here, this is a photometric plan of the proposed field. You'll see that there are 4 different light towers here, here, and here, and the number of foot candles throughout the area is identified with these in this array. And you'll see that along the property line, on the western property line, we have 0 foot candles as spillover, and 0 and minimum of 0.1, or sorry, maximum of 0.1 along the southern property line for about 30 or 40 feet. So we do have no spillover of the lighting. We do also have, if I can find the photos. Give me a second. So, all right, John, this was a field, it's a daytime shot of another field that Musco is providing similar lighting for. And I'm going to give you a nighttime version. And you'll see similar lighting system that we're proposing here. And you can see that beyond the lights, there is no scatter of lighting at all. Okay.
Is that on the southern boundary? You say it doesn't spill over. You have it at 0.1. Is it the property line? Is that the chain link fence? Which is the exact property line? Is it the fence or is it further away?
So actually, the actual property line is further into the property. The actual backyards of the adjacent homes, believe it or not, encroach onto the school property.
So you're saying that the homes encroach upon the school property?
Yes.
Whose fence is that there?
That I do not know.
Is that the college fence?
I don't have that answer.
Does anybody?
Is Joe Corliss on? Joe?
You're on mute, Joe.
Who are we waiting for?
I had asked if Joe Corliss was on, Mr. Warren, but I don't think he's responded. I know I saw him on before.
So Brian, if we could just continue with the lighting.
Yeah.
So 82M has shared a before and after photo of a site that has similar conditions with houses neighboring an adjacent running track. And based on a photometric plan, you can see that we meet the thresholds for foot candles. David Cluas, are you on from Musco? Okay, so I'm not sure if his connection. So the reason to answer one of the questions while we stay on lighting, the 80-foot poles that you see in this picture that are also on our site plan, the 80-foot poles are required to control the light spill and glare. It's opposite what people usually think. They believe that lowering light poles controls the light better, and that's not true. The higher light poles, the angle of the light faces down on the field, and it gives a better control of the light on the field. And I know someone mentioned that, why do we need this much light for soccer? Although soccer is a larger ball that travels at a smaller speed, they do have a men's and women's lacrosse program here, which obviously is a smaller ball that travels at a higher speed. So the amount of light that is on the field is designed for player safety.
Okay, is the lighting plan, is that just the spotlights you're talking about, or does that include the security lighting also?
That is the spotlights that are considered field lighting at the top. What typically happens, these lights are all LED technology, so many of the fields that everyone is accustomed to looking at are a different type of light. They were the old metal halide type of structure, so the LED technology that everyone is becoming very familiar with, whether it's in their own home or commercially, is a light system that's proposed to be utilized here. They have much more control of glare, and they can act as a security light as well by one or two of them minimally turning on.
Is that the security system in the fields there? One or two of them will be left on, or is there perimeter lighting separate and distinct from the towers?
No, there's one or two or a series of them that can be utilized for security lighting. I don't believe the intent is to leave them burning nonstop, but they have the ability to light certain fixtures on the pole to act as security lighting or even egress lighting after an event, so you don't have to keep all the field lighting on.
Thank you.
John, there is no separate security light system. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's integrated into the light tower itself. Many times on these facilities, security lighting is lowered down on a pole to a height of roughly 20 feet to 18 feet. And that's done for various reasons. Many times there's cameras that are installed on a pole that need a certain level of light so the cameras can work. But this current system has lights at the top of the pole that can be utilized for security. Whether the lights are lower or at the top can be discussed. But the lights itself will still be focused on the field and the running track. There will be no glare whether they're higher or low.
All right. Mr. Mandel, I believe you had also asked about the change in the detention system.
Yeah, that's a little further down. I'd asked about the distances. Are those the correct distances? Because it was brought up, Buildings Department number 4. Is that 50 feet and that 65 feet the correct distances to the property line, or was it to the fence? I was was asking for a clarification on that.
Okay.
I can handle that, Brian. Yeah, this is Matt Mullen again. So that actually is the distance to the fence. It's even a little bit further to the actual property line because of that encroachment that I mentioned.
Okay. And this aside on the thing with the Watercourse, have we filed for the Watercourse diversion permit yet?
Not at this time, no. We intend to, but it has not actually happened yet.
Right. The next thing I did ask for was the detention system. DEME had brought up number 2A in their second report. They talked about not using an underground system, but rather an above ground system for the overflow or the water storage. Is that discussed yet with them?
No, we've only received their comments yesterday, but I believe their letter did state that they allow underground systems only when above ground systems, when there's not sufficient space for it, in which case there is not sufficient space to install an above ground system here. We intend to reach out to them directly to discuss that.
Okay.
So you're going to reach out to Bruce Peters, Matt, is that correct?
Yes.
And explain, I think you explained to me why it was not feasible to have an above ground detention system. There just wasn't enough room. Mr. Mandel, would you like some elaboration on that, or is the answer so far?
No, I guess you're going to have to speak to him because Bruce seems to think that there is ample room. So, you know, once they discuss it, then we can look at that in the future.
Yes, and obviously we'll have to satisfy Mr. Peters on that issue.
Right.
Okay, I think your next comment, Mr. Mandel, was about application to the Army Corps. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Army Corps, the Rockland County Drainage, and the New York State DEC.
So
Yes,
I'll address this. So we have filed for the joint application for permit with DEC and Army Corps of Engineers. The others have not yet been applied for, but we fully intend to do so.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, those are conditions of approval, Mr. Mandel. We have to obtain any and all required permits from all involved agencies.
Right. The last thing with DEME was the perk tests.
Yes. Matt, do you care to answer that, or shall I just say that, again, this is an issue that we're going to have to satisfy Mr. Peters about? There were perk tests that were performed. If he wishes them to be redone in the spring, I know that's his preferred time period, then we will have to do that.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mandel, I think you had a question about days of operation, weeks of operation.
Correct.
Did I get all of that? Is there more to that before we answer?
Days of operation, months of operation, when the earliest starting time and what will be the latest time at night to end?
Well, I can tell you, as I recall, the town code requires, activity or allows activity up until 10 o'clock at night. And I believe there also are hours of operation you're not supposed to start before. Is it 8 o'clock, I believe, in the morning? John Burke, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to give for those who don't know the soccer and lacrosse schedules on the coach level, which I don't expect everyone to know that. Obviously, the two soccers are fall sports. Typically, they start around August 15th. Give or take a couple of days. They usually come in a week to 10 days before school begins. We have soccer has a schedule of about 16 to 18 games in total. So you split that in half, home and away. So you're looking at 8 or 9 home games each. So you're looking in the fall of 16 to 18 home games between men and women's soccer. Cross country might use it occasionally. Typically, cross country likes to run.
Sir, your audio is breaking up. We can't understand you at this point.
Basically, soccer's over by the first week of November. Our playoffs usually start.
We're losing you. Can somebody else help with?
Week. So this usually is ended by the first week of November. Lacrosse starts.
John, take yourself off video to give yourself more bandwidth.
John, yeah, you're breaking up. So
I'm sorry.
It was suggested that you shut down your video, and perhaps it would help in your audio. If you could repeat it, I think a lot of it was lost, John. I'm sorry.
Got it. Can you hear me now?
No.
Still pretty bad.
Could you start again? I'm sorry, John.
No, we can hear me. Okay, then. Sure. The two soccer sports are fall. They go August 15th to about November 7th. Play 18 games. Still can't hear me. Okay.
I think I just heard. I think you said soccer is 18 games, a total?
Yes.
And that's for men and women?
Yes.
And lacrosse?
Lacrosse plays about 15 games. So you split half of them at home, 7 or 8 home games.
7 home games for lacrosse. That would be 7 for men, 7 for women?
Correct.
Okay. And what about track and field?
Track and field will not host, because we don't have 8 lanes, we will not host a track and field event. They'll just practice there.
So no meets there, just practice at the field.
That is correct.
Okay. And any other use? You have your outside rentals. You mentioned those. They're limited to a number of hours, and we would be willing to enter into as a condition of any approval that the hours of rentals, the number of rentals would be so limited.
What's your anticipated night use for the field with all these games? How many are going to be at night, during the day? How many times the lights going to be on? That's really the question,
Right. If you can hear me, I think we would propose playing 2 night games a month. So we'd only give men's soccer and women's soccer 1 night match per month, which only gives them 2 each.
A total of 2 men's and 2 women's soccer games at night for the year?
Correct. Yes. And the same will be for lacrosse.
I'm sorry, were there night games for lacrosse?
2 and 2.
2 and 2 as well for the whole year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A total of 4 lacrosse night games for the whole year.
That is correct.
And I would assume, like, let's say you have a championship year and you have playoffs. You would probably, if you hosted a playoff game, you would probably play that at night. I would assume, correct?
Well, our conference.
I don't want to. You're saying 5, 4. I'm looking to be realistic in terms of what the usage is, just to try and find out. Would you, if you like made the playoffs, would you be hosting a game, or it would automatically be played somewhere else?
The first round game would be at home for soccer. It's a quarterfinals. And then the semifinals and finals are at one site. Usually it's soccer right now is up in Connecticut. Lacrosse is down in Georgian Court, which is in Lakewood, New Jersey. So
potentially, for argument's sake, let's say potentially there could be a 5th night game if you did make the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's played at night. Okay, that's all. I'm just trying to be fair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Yes. And
let's go back to Mr. Mandel. Mr. Mandel, have all your questions been answered?
I think he asked a question about the PA system.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
I did write it down, Mr. Mandel. PA system, John, could you answer that? First off, I would respond by saying that the PA system will fully comply with the noise ordinance for the town. With respect to other usage, Mr. Burke, could you answer Mr. Mandel's question?
Sure, I'll try if you can hear me. Yes, we'll only use the PA system during matches or official college events. We do not use it for practice. I know some schools use the PA system for music during practice. That is not our policy up to this point, and that will continue. So it's really only going to be used when we have a match going for soccer or lacrosse.
Okay, so the PA system would be utilized only during actual games for soccer and lacrosse.
That is correct.
I think everybody's concern is that if you're going to use the PA system for night games, that you're going to have an issue with noise coming off the property to the neighborhood. And I think that's all right. Mr. Mandel, do you have anything else, sir?
No, not at this time. I think you've asked that last thing that I was talking about the nighttime use of the PA system. All right, thank you. Nothing further at this time. I'll reserve it to after the people talk.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mandel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Dell, have we answered your question?
No.
Oh, actually, Mr. Dell, I think, had a couple of suggestions. He had some concerns about the lights, which, Mr. Dell, have we answered your questions, or did you have any other questions about the lights?
The light questions seem to be answered, but I have to say the answers were more than a little troubling. But I have a number of other questions which were not answered at all.
Yes, I believe you had.
Let's get them answered, please.
Yes.
Somebody's got to ask the question so we can get it answered. Mr. Dell, what other questions do you have that has not been answered?
Okay, questions that have not been answered. First of all, general comment. The way this plan is coming in, it seems more like what we'd expect for a consultation. I think there's a lot of information we haven't had. I think I would have trouble moving this out without the applicant asking for a continuance to evaluate everything else. Some of the other members may disagree, but I'm just having trouble. Okay, now, I propose moving the entire track area 10 to 20 feet in an easterly direction. Now, usually when plans come in like this, they're not like, well, this is how it's going to be, take it or leave it. We want to have at least, I think, some idea and some discussion of what's going to happen. Now, if you were to move it 20 feet to the east, that would give quite a bit of additional undisturbed area to the properties to the west. Would this be a problem?
Mr. Dell, I can tell you that there were people on our team, on our end of things, before these plans were submitted that asked that very question. So I'm going to ask, I guess, H2M. Matt, could you answer that question for Mr. Dell?
Yes, we considered moving it a little further to the east, but there are existing buildings that prohibit that.
I didn't see that looking at the grades. Perhaps we're looking at different plans because there are things called retaining walls that could help all of this out. For example, you could have a retaining wall on the westerly side, a 4-foot retaining wall, and that would give you an additional 15 to 20 foot undisturbed. In terms of your distances from your buildings, unless I'm looking at something different than you did, I see no reason why you can't put in a small retaining wall and accomplish this quite easily. We're not talking about moving at 60 feet. We're talking about maybe moving at 10 to 20 feet. I don't think your up there is quite as tight as you're portraying it.
Well, there right now there is limited room between the bleachers and that existing building. If we do move it further to the east, we basically cut off the southeast corner of the site from maintenance vehicles and all other access.
So you have to have on that level, you have to have a maintenance. All right, so how much width do you need? 12 feet?
And plus whatever grading is required, and if you had to construct a retaining wall.
Well, that's why I said a retaining wall.
Yeah, but well,
a retaining wall. I don't understand this.
But we need space for a vehicle to pass by.
Fine. What's the space right now that exists between the proposed bleachers and the building? What is it dimensioned at?
It's probably about 15 feet or so.
15 feet or so?
Maybe 20. Maybe 20. I don't have an exact dimension.
You see, that's what I mean. A lot of this seems preliminary to me. There are ways you could do this, and I'm sure you're professionals. You know what I'm talking about. Unless you just want to say, this is the plan, take it or leave it. Because I think it's a good concept in some ways. There are a lot of issues with this, but the kind of rigidity I'm getting now from you is a little disconcerting.
So we just had someone check the dimension.
On the
It's 18 feet right now.
Let's just take that. Can you do that?
On the western side?
Retaining wall.
Mr. Dell, if I may ask a question, with what Mr. Dell is saying in respect to moving the field to the east 20 feet, what if you were to do that and move the dugout south 20 feet? That would still give you room between the building and the dugout.
So the bleachers you're talking about.
The bleachers down in the south 20 feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, typically bleachers are centered on the field. If we did so, it would not be centered on the field at that point.
I understand that. I said, but we kind of have a unique position here that we kind of have to go along with what we have and if possibly work with it.
Well, I'd have to consult with the college about that. Obviously, that's subjective as far as the use of the field.
Okay, Mr. Dell, anything else?
Yes, a number of things. We want to eliminate the tree removal. We also talked about the possibility of lowering the elevation of the field by even 3 feet. That would give quite a bit more protection to the properties to the west and to the south. The biggest question I have right now is, are you precluding having events and concerts at this site? Are we going to have a rock and roll concert? Is that going to be something you're going to say it's taken off the table and to be put into a decision?
Mr. Dell, there's no plans to have rock and roll concerts there.
That wasn't the question, sir. Can you do that, or you have to talk about it? I'm sorry to be direct about this, but I feel, I'm doing a lot of prevarication. You haven't thought about it? Okay, I'd like a clarification.
And so the question is, are we going to have any rock and roll concerts there?
Any concerts? Yes.
No, I believe that's correct. John Burke, Sister, could we agree not to have, certainly it would probably exceed the noise ordinance for the town and probably wouldn't be allowed anyway.
Well, that's not the question. Can we preclude those? Are you willing to state at this time, or at least think about it, that you will not have concerts there?
Yes, Mr. Dell. I would certainly, not having received a response from the college, I'm not sure whether they're muted or what, but I think I could say that, yes, we will absolutely consider your request and advise you. I suspect the answer is going to be, yes, we will preclude concerts there.
Okay, as long as I get, answers. Now, as I said, I think it's basically, I think you're a great institution and everything else, but I feel that this is, when you're having the lights in there, it's creating a lot of other problems that didn't exist beforehand. I think you'd have a lot less resistance to this without those lights. Those are usually the type of lights we see along Veterans Memorial Highway and other places. And at no place have I ever seen them right next to within like 50 to 80 feet or 100 feet, a couple hundred feet of residential areas. From the LED technology, we also know that when this happens, there's a lot of spillover, there's reflected light, etc. So if I'm living in one of those houses that are just to the west of this, I don't think I'll be able to see too many stars anymore at night. And I don't know if that's a right, but it's something that if I was there, I wouldn't be too pleased about. I mean, I think I would say very strongly that the applicant should request a continuance. This is one person's opinion. And then we could come back in with a lot of these questions, which are not really being carefully answered because you don't have the time to do it. I appreciate that. But you have a recording of the meeting. You can come back with presentations, augmented drawings, whatever else you need, so that we have something upon which we can make a firm determination. I also agree, at minimum, I think the long form EAF should be used. That's the extent of my questions. I do reserve the right to make comments and questions, but thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm sorry if I'm being a little direct here, but I feel that my questions weren't being answered. And I think many people in participating in this from the public may feel similarly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews.
I have no further questions right now. I'd like to hear from the public.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. McCory.
Oh, yeah, I asked a few questions earlier. Just if we can have it back and forth, and just about the tree removal. I can't see on the plans what trees are actually part of that brush removal. Can you answer that? Will there be a plan that the board can see when you come back that will show how many trees are there and how many trees are being removed?
Matt, can you answer that?
If that is something that needs to be prepared, we can prepare one.
All right, yeah. And just not to harp on it, there's a lot of outstanding issues and questions with this plan. I can't see this, that they shouldn't move on from tonight. There's just, everybody has questions and almost the answers are kind of vague answers as well. Just another question with the lighting. Are there any examples in the town of Orangetown that has this type of lighting?
David, come on from Musco. Is he on the call now?
Yes, I'm on here now.
Okay. This is David Koulis from Musco Lighting. He wasn't available before. He was having some technical difficulties, but he's here right now. David, in your absence, Matt Mullen kind of supplied a couple of answers with respect to the lighting. I recall going to the Pearl River High School one evening with some of the neighbors and some representatives of the college to look at the lights that were installed at the Pearl River field. Now, as I recall, there was some spillover at that light, but as I understand it, the system that's proposed for this field is different. Could you explain what differences there are between the ones at Pearl River and the ones that are proposed? And I know Mr. Dell mentioned the ones over by Orangeburg Road where the existing soccer fields are. I live in Pearl River. I pass by those things. They're on late at night and they're very bright. Could you just kind of differentiate what is different about what's being proposed for this field from the ones in Orangeburg as well as the ones at Pearl River?
Yeah, so actually all of the town's sports lighting is Musco, whether it's at the Parks and Rec Department, at Veterans Memorial Park, the OMM facility, Tappan Zee High School, and then the most recent installation is at Pearl River High School, which has a similar lighting technology, same pole heights as proposed for Dominican College, except on a much toned down scale. So for Dominican College, we have, again, the 4 80-foot poles. That is pretty common for this type of facility based on this footprint. Well, Pearl River High School and Tappan Zee High School have essentially the same footprint as this proposed facility. Those fields also have 80-foot poles. Tappan Zee High School has the older style metal halide lighting, and Pearl River High School has LED lighting installed in 2019. So compared to what's proposed for Dominican, Pearl River, for instance, is also in a residential neighborhood. There is significantly more light there based on how that project was designed for the overall facility in terms of lighting the track for track meets, lighting the bleachers in the concourse area behind the new grandstand. So there's ample lighting for people to navigate around. So compared to Pearl River, for instance, Dominican College is going to have significantly less number of fixtures. Pearl River has 56. Proposed for Dominican College is 36 luminaires total. They're all fully shielded. The light levels on the field will be similar to other areas in the facility and compliant with NCAA intercollegiate play for the illuminance level is 50-foot candle average on the field overlays. The track, for instance, is going to have 50% less light at Dominican College compared to what's at Pearl River and even Tappan Zee High School, which for those schools is exceeding 20-foot candle average. Dominican is going to have less than 10. The bleachers, or even just the immediate area around the field, is going to have an approximately 5-foot candles, whereas Pearl River, Tappan Zee have more than 20 and 25-foot candles in those areas. So this is really a toned down version of other installations in the area based on this particular site and the proximity to the residential property lines. We're going above and beyond to meet what the town allows for light spill at the property line. And then beyond the property line, there's 0 light spill in terms of foot candles based on what we show on our plan right now. And then also the lighting system itself is considered dark sky compliant. And if we were to take this further, we could also look at integrating, there's a design criteria that the International Dark Sky Association has issued 2 years ago. That is design criteria for community-friendly outdoor sports lighting. And this particular facility as designed actually will meet those standards, which go above and beyond what the town requires just in general.
All right, thank you for the explanation. But I know when the neighbors went over to see the Pearl River lights, they weren't impressed at all. They got to see how bright and how much impact they will have on their surrounding properties. So I don't know if that was a good plan by Dominican, and I heard it backfired because they were not impressed at all.
Pearl River High School's installation is technically compliant with the town of Orange, the town's guidelines as well at the property lines. And again, to reiterate, that is not going to be similar to what is going to be proposed for Dominican. It's a much toned down version based on what we're looking to light, and that's it.
I understand. I'm saying, but even those properties, they're in compliance with town code. But anybody that drives by the soccer fields at night in the summer will see how bright those lights are. So even though you're telling me it's 0.01 or 0.00 at the property line for those properties, because that's town code, anybody can see how bright these lights are. Now, even though they're to code, it'll still have a negative effect on the properties. And just to move on quick with the landscape plan, you need more trees on the west side for screening. For some reason it ends at certain properties. It should go north, further north to screen those properties. And you have no screening on the south end of new trees for some reason. You forgot all about those neighbors right there too. I agree. This is too close to the property line. If you get rid of the 6-lane track, you'll have the wiggle room. Since you're not having track and field events, it's just for practice. You get rid of the 6-lane track, you can move that property away from lines. You get rid of the lights, it alleviates a lot more issues. And I'd like to know if a sports complex with the rental option is actually to town code in the R40 zoning. I don't know if Jan can chime in, because I'm very confused how a residential zoning can have this sports complex that they can rent out for profit. And that's it. A lot of outstanding issues. I can't see myself supporting this plan as presented tonight. So thank you for your time, guys.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCory. Mr. Bond.
Yeah, my big question on this again is don't want to keep harping on it is the rentals, because that's going to up the use of this significantly. If you're going to let like OMM come in and practice there every night, they're going to want to practice at night. The place is going to be lit all the time. If you're not going to be able to control it. I understand, you're going to have X amount of use by the school, and that's what you want. But all these outside organizations are just going to increase the problems that are in the neighborhood. So they need to be severely limited if allowed at all. So.
Mr. Bond, thank you for your comment. And I think Mr. Burke did indicate that they were willing to limit the number of outside groups that came in, the usage to a certain number of hours per week. I think I heard 8 to 10 hours during school year and 15 to 20 hours for 2 months during the summer. So we will certainly take your comment under advisement, and we will discuss that internally.
So how many nights a week do you foresee the lights being on during the course of the year?
Well, I believe I heard Mr. Burke say that there were, 2 night games for each men's and...
I get the game piece, but in fairness to the college and in fairness to the players, they're going to practice at night a certain amount of nights, which I understand, but it can't be every night. This can't be a 7-day-a-week nighttime facility. It borders a residential neighborhood, I mean, I heard, somebody commented, I think it was Mr. McCory, about the Pearl River lights. I mean, we put those on for Dominican to come over and take a look at it. We try not to play any games there during the winter. We don't allow, like, you ride by Veterans Field, those lights are on every night. And a lot of times, most of the time that you see people still playing there. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. So there's no residential area there. It's not a problem. But in a residential area, you have to limit the amount of use by the outside. It's just the way it is. If you want to light the field,
Yeah. Is Mr. Burke still on the call?
Yes, I am.
John, will there be any practices at night?
I see our non-championship season. So I don't want to get too technical here, but in the fall, soccer plays, they're in season. lacrosse is out of season, so they're allowed a limited number of practices during a 30 to 45 day period. So I see them getting the extra time, which potentially could go into the evening. They do not practice every day because they're out of season. Soccer, as everybody knows, for NCAA rules, you're allowed 6 days of practice a week. Obviously, that usually includes 1 or 2 games a week. Some of those be on the road. So I don't anticipate renting at night. I see maybe our lacrosse team using after soccer practices. They'll get the, what do you call the, whatever the off hour is, the 6 to 8 slot would potentially be lacrosse, and they'll be inverted in the spring. When lacrosse is in season, then soccer would get the extra. So that's how I see it going. Again, that would be 3 or 4 times a week. Just going by over a 30-day period, so not all the time, obviously. I don't know if that helps answer that question.
Okay, and what time of year is the field going to be down, basically?
Yeah, so
will there be basically no use on the field from December through the beginning of March? I would anticipate you wouldn't be practicing at all, right?
Yeah, November 15th through February 1 would be completely downtime. And then February 1 is sort of when our lacrosse team starts to practice.
Okay. All right. So if the lacrosse team practice on February 1, then they're going to be practicing at night. Because, I mean, it's dark at 4 o'clock. So,
Yeah, I mean,
so it's going to be on. I get that. But it's not going to be on. I mean, if they don't start practice till 9 o'clock and it's on till 11 o'clock, that's a problem, I know you're right by veterans, those lights are on all the time. They're on late too. So, and there's people there late. So.
I understand your concern, Mr. Bond. I think I already said, though, that the lights will go out no later than 10 o'clock every night. John, is that correct?
That would be the latest. I do anticipate that will not be every night. I know that's the concern, but like I said to you, I think our in-season sports typically right now they practice at 2:30, 4:30. So I see a slot at potentially 6:30 if we were lucky enough to have the lights, and that would be a couple times a week, 3 or 4. But that would also include weekends, which they don't have to go at night.
And have you been who's contacted you so far about renting the field?
OMM has contacted us a while ago. There's another soccer organization called Manhattan Soccer Club. We really haven't talked to anybody else because we don't know how this was going to go. We know we haven't talked to any lacrosse groups, so I have no idea. What we do know is we'd rather limit the number of organizations we deal with. That's the one thing we sort of came to grips with. Certainly, we're going to take a lot of what we heard tonight into discussion going forward. But again, until we get some certainty, there's no point in really actively looking for deals or contracts for anybody coming in for next year.
Okay. All right, because the key is, you need to attempt to try and be a good neighbor. And limiting the use is going to be number one in terms of doing that. So at night. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bond. Okay. Do any other board members have any questions? Because I'd like to open up the public session. Okay. I'm going to open up the public. Excuse me?
Mr. Chairman, can we take a 5-minute break? We've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes.
All right, a 5-minute break. Come back at 9:20.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you, everybody. Is everybody back? Mr. Dell? Mr. Dell?
I'm here, sir. Thank you.
Is Mr. Dell here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. We're waiting for you. All right.
Okay.
A couple announcements before we open up the public session. I want everybody to have an opportunity to speak. Okay. As everybody has heard, this board has a lot of concerns. They have asked a lot of questions, and I think that these are some, if not all, of your concerns and your questions. There's a lot of people here that wish to speak. If we can, I'd like you to just, when we call on you, just state your name and your address, and you say, please, just so that we can move this along. I don't wish to be here all night, but I want everybody to speak. Just state that you have the same concerns as Mr. Dell or Mr. Mandel or the person in front of you or whatever. But we want your name and your address, and we do want your input. Everybody's going to be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. I will be keeping the time. When the time gets close, I'm going to hold up my phone, and please be respectful for the time that you're allotted. And I hope everybody can get their answers, questioned, and we can get the applicant to really figure this all out, and so that everybody was happy with it. Okay. At that point, I'm going to ask for I think Slavin has control of the board, and some names. And could we have just somebody raise their hand as the first person, and we'll open it up to the public. Anybody wish to speak on this application? Yes, sir.
Mr. Nawalczyk, you're up.
Thank you. If I could just bring up my notes. First, I would like to object to the 3-minute time limit on a very serious project like this. I don't think it's fair. I would like to be clear that I'm the Director of Campus Safety and Health at St. Thomas Aquinas College. And I understand the robustness of an athletic program and how important it is. And I would like to thank Sister for hosting us several times, and they've had displays, so I'm not sure why they're not presenting today. I do feel a little cheated or not 100% truthful, because they brought us over to Pearl River High School stating that this is what the DC lights will look like. And once we started the questions, now all of a sudden they're backpedaling. 40 years of a grass field, 100% agreement, happy daytime noise. But this is going to become a real quality of life issue. Mr. Quinn, I hope you have your pencil ready, because I have numerous questions for my 3 minutes. You say that noise can go till 10 p.m. What about the elementary school kids who should be in bed by then? 8 a.m. You're saying that, I heard Mr. Burke say that there will be no practices before 8 a.m. I know at Stack, our teams are on the field at 6:30 in the morning practicing. We shovel our field to practice when needed. The PA system is facing the residences. Why can't it be faced towards the college itself? No music during practice. I find this to be a false statement. I have heard music many times, and on one occasion even had to request that it be turned down by Mr. Lennon, the head of security at Dominican College. People are hanging out in the woods now. How is that going to change when there are bleachers and other areas to go to? Late hours will definitely be used by more than Dominican College, and I'll address that in a minute. We're talking about tree removal. What about all the green initiatives in society today? How long will it take the trees to grow to the current height of the 80+ trees there are now? Some of the trees are only at the height of the light poles. Who's going to supervise the security? Dominican College works with a contract company. They don't have their own company right now. Who's going to supervise the tailgates? What is their plans? What work has been done to coordinate with the emergency medical services, the police department, the fire department? Because this will increase their caseload and trips out of the station. Nobody mentioned the spring football team practices. That is publicly mentioned in their materials, that will be extra time on the field. Parking there is stressed now. I know they referred to the big parking lot, but I know from experience, coaches, refs, and students are not good at following rules, and there is no parking in that area. Increased usage, but DC people only come for 20, 30 people. Why do we need a bleacher of 250 people? That's for the rentals. That's clear. Rental of facilities definitely makes this a business. It's no longer a school of higher education. How can the zoning board say they don't want any more correspondence on this if they don't even address it? I think that's very unfair. I will end with the financial strains of the COVID pandemic and higher education struggles for admission and retention. Will DC have the money to complete the task once started? And will this cause further need for rentals? Mr. Chairman, I disagree with your 3-minute time limit. It is not fair.
Sir, this application will not be finalized tonight. You will have time to come back to ask more questions and get them answered, sir. We have to allow that. If you think,
my time be limited to 3 minutes again?
yes, sir. If you think we have 20 people for 3 minutes, that is 1 hour. If you have 3
Sir,
minutes,
it's the public's right to
Okay.
speak.
going to,
This is a
sir,
very serious impact
going
on our
to,
neighbors.
please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Ken McCloskey is next in line to speak.
Good evening, Mr. Warren. Thank you very much for setting aside the entire evening. Thank you to you and your committee for listening to us this evening. I have a couple of comments. I'm 83 Chestnut Oval. My property abuts the west side of this project. Comments about Mr. Quinn mentioning several times that this is simply an upgrade of an existing property is like saying my neighbor who has a small above ground pool is going to turn his backyard into a swim club. This is not just a simple upgrade. I was one of those participants that went to the meetings at Dominican College, and along with the invitation over to Pearl River, I agree with Mr. Bond, his statements before that those of us that went over there were not satisfied with the light situation. The questions that we asked regarding the usage by the rental organizations was very evasive. I didn't see anything change tonight, although Mr. Burke mentioned 15 to 20 hours a week out of season. That's primarily the college out of season is the summertime. When are those 20 hours going to take place? Who's going to be in charge of security? Who do I contact when, who's monitoring the number of hours and the protocols as to when the lights go off, and who am I supposed to call when there's a problem? There were some questions about moving the field to accommodate some other spacing. I think that this field is a square peg in a round hole. This property is not the correct property for this kind of facility. As for Mr. Koulis's comments about Pearl River's high school property or the athletic field being close in proximity to Oriole, I think the documents and town drawings will show that there's certainly more setback to those homes from Oriole to those athletic fields. There are higher trees to block some of those lights. And now we're talking about removing trees that potentially would block those lights. There were comments about the lights having no set or no lighting behind. Okay, I appreciate that technology will only push the lighting forward. That's not going to stop my line of sight sitting in my backyard looking at an 80-foot tower 25 feet from my patio. I'm sympathetic to Dominicans' needs. I've seen the video, YouTube. They need this field. They need this field. They need this field. I'm sympathetic to that, but this is not the right property in the middle of a residential area for that kind of a project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, next would be Mr. Ed Ramos.
Mr. Ramos.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I missed the question. I'm sorry.
It's your turn to speak, sir.
Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name is Edwin Ramos. I live on 34 Carlton Road. And, it's kind of crazy because, I guess the residents that live in this area that really greatly impacted should have been notified by certified mail instead of, having to find out through a flyer or a neighbor who found out through somebody else. My house is right on the border of this, and it's like, it's going to affect quality of life. The lights, if they say the lights are not going to affect us, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I can see lights from the Tappan Zee that go on. We could hear noise here like crazy. It's like, how do you justify saying it's not going to affect the quality of our lives, especially if we go to sleep late at night or whatever. We go to sleep early. I wake up at 4 a.m. to go to work. I guess all the points that have been brought up by the other people here, I agree with them. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of questions that are not answered, properly, and property values are going to go down. If I decide to move, how am I going to sell my home knowing that there's going to be this huge stadium back there? And even on the plans, it doesn't even show exactly. I mean, I'm not an architect, but I look at this and I can't see where this actual stadium is being built on the site.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, next is Lorraine McGrath.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 46 Chestnut Oval. So I want to talk to you tonight about choice and quality of life. My family has owned our home since 1961. Our neighborhood was chosen due to the beautiful setting and the quiet location for a better quality of life for our entire family. I was raised living next door to the orphanage, and in later years, parts of the college. The only noise we ever heard from there was kids playing in the pool or the church bells ringing. They were very good neighbors. I attended St. Catherine's School, and I always looked forward to attending the Dominican Sisters Festival every September. Mr. Quinn stated there's some changes. Some of the changes to the field will include some lighting. I would like to voice my concerns over the huge impact this would cause to all the homes neighboring the field. Sister gave us a breakdown of students' majors at the college. It would almost be similar to the professions or a list of all the homeowners' occupations who live surrounding the colleges. We are the nurses, the accountants, the occupational therapists, the teachers, the homemakers, the physical therapists. Some of us work third shift, which means we take our nap, or we sleep from 5 p.m. till 11 or 12 a.m. How many homeowners shopping for a home would choose a house today next to a stadium? It would or could be a huge deal breaker, or at the very least, have a significant decrease in the value of that house. We, the homeowners, did not have a choice for this. We chose our homes first. These lights will have a spillover. The entire sky around the area will be illuminated. I do not believe that they are considering this when they're considering spill light or spillover, but it is a fact. The college is gaining revenue from these proposed changes by the surrounding neighbors are paying the prices. We are being inconvenienced, and we are having a large decrease in the value of our everyday living and the values of our homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Tina Adino is next.
Thank you, everybody, for tonight. I just wanted to
for the record, please.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's 87 Chestnut Oval.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say thank you to the board members that are speaking out in opposition of this tonight and postponing, and for all of my other neighbors. I just wanted to say that we live on what I consider a very desirable street in Orangetown. No one comes down our block unless you need to because of the unique shape of our road. By doing so and putting this stadium in our backyard, just like Mrs. McGrath just said, it will really affect our quality of life. We sent in some letters that said that the project is just really too large for the residential area that it's in. And really the intent of the field and the installation of the lights is posing a significant impact on our neighborhood and the families who live right next door. They said 3 to 4 days a week, those lights would be on at night. I'm no mathematician, I'm an English teacher, but that's 50 to 60% of every week, those nighttime lights will be on in our backyards. And the security lights were not mentioned. They were stated that they would be held within. I'm sitting in the furthest point in my house right now, and I'm looking out to Dominican College as we speak. And I can see 3 or 4 lights already through the tree line. And I am in one of the most wooded areas of the tree backyards mentioned. Mr. Dell asked about the stars. I mean, that's something that I want to do with my son. I am fearing that I won't be able to enjoy the backyard with my son. It's really the wrong area. But more specifically with the lighting, I would ask that we had looked carefully at that section 21A town code that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And in 21A7, part B number 3, it states that the exterior lighting must be addressed and that, quote, the location, power, direction, and time of any exterior lighting of the site shall have no adverse effect upon any properties in adjoining residence districts by impairing the established character or potential use of such properties in such districts. And then it goes on to say it should be approved by the Architecture Community and Appearance Board of Review. I would really think that this has an extreme adverse effect on the character of and the established character of all of our backyards and all of our neighborhood. So I thank you for listening to us and thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Matthew Roderick is next.
Thank you very much, and thank you for members of the board. It seems to me that there's a threshold issue that has not been addressed or has been danced around, which is the scope of controls in this matter. And I'll tell you, I am a lawyer, and I look at it. I should say I live at 63 Chestnut Oval, which is immediately adjacent to the lights, and it just hasn't been addressed. You know, if there's any enlargement of the current use, and it's been tried to be soft pedaled, that it's minimal, or that the soccer field's been there for forever, if there's an enlargement of the use, it has to comply with the R40 use tables, and it just doesn't. There's no way that you can view the submission by Dominican as anything but, at the very least, an enlargement or a reconstruction of the current use. And because athletic complex isn't listed in the use tables, it's simply impermissible. And so I think regardless of the trees that can be removed or the water redistribution or any of those issues, if you find that it's an enlargement of the use, and you find that an athletic complex is impermissible and not listed specifically in the R40 use tables, they can't build it. And I haven't heard that addressed, and I would love to hear that addressed. I've been involved in actions in lieu of prerogative writs in New Jersey, and I've been involved in Article 78 proceedings in New York State as a lawyer. And I think that if you go the way of the neighbors and you go the way and you listen to the community, the town doesn't risk any of those downsides. And I know Mr. Paloka is familiar with those concerns, and I hope that he takes it seriously. I hope the board takes it seriously, because it's very easy to come to that common sense conclusion that this should not go forward and satisfy the board's obligations to the community. It's very hard, and you have to do a lot of backflips in order to come to the conclusion that Dominican's request here, that an athletic complex next to my house makes sense or fits within the code. And I think that's it. I'm mindful of everyone else's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Lauren Palazzolo was next.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for making time to take all of our comments. I think that I can say that I agree with.
Could you state your name for your address for the record?
Sure. My name is Lauren Palazzolo. I live at 91 Chestnut Oval. I would have to say that I agree with all of my neighbors in their previous concerns. I am the daughter and the granddaughter of people who worked at Dominican College. I think that everybody who lives here wants to see our local colleges succeed and have success. I don't know that this particular complex is the way to achieve that. It certainly feels that the improvements are more than just improvements, and I would like to see consideration for the neighborhood taken into consideration. The lights do seem that they will be intrusive, and as a resident, I would like to be able to enjoy the yard with our son. There's a wildlife population that will be affected by the number of trees that are taken down. What are the environmental impacts beyond the water that we're going to see in our neighborhoods? So thank you very much for your time. And again, I would agree with everything that my neighbors have stated ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Vanessa Lappins.
Hi, everyone. This is Vanessa Lappins. I live at 659 Western Highway, and I'm the Blauvelt representative for our local coupon. I find tonight's approach highly irregular. Typically, we get a detailed presentation from the applicant, and the board has a give or take and answers questions back and forth. It's disingenuous and condescending to hear from Brian Quinn and others, whoa, I couldn't write all of that down. It feels like a way to evade facts and data, and then the onus is on the board to ask and re-ask and then re-ask again until they get the answers to their questions. So I'd like to see a comprehensive presentation with all of the questions that the local neighborhood has asked answered. Environmental issues, lights, noise, traffic. Specifically, in their Dirt to Turf video, they say that the economic impact will benefit the Hudson Valley from $236,000 to $587,000. So clearly, there's a significant amount of rental and income that's going to be taken in and distributed to the college itself as well as the local community. That bridge has to be explained vis-a-vis the traffic increases and rentals that are predicted. So I'd like to see that detail presented to the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, next is Pat McNamee.
Yes, hi. I live at 75 Chestnut Oval. My property is directly behind the current field and the bleachers. My husband and we have lived here for over 27 years. When we moved here, it's still, we had the field, we had the scoreboard that's on the other side, and we had the bleachers. So any change in plan to building their current increase in use, they are calling it in their Dirt to Turf campaign, their video, they are calling it a stadium. And I really don't know why a stadium should be allowed to be built in a residential neighborhood. Directly 50 feet from my back fence. Unfortunately, I had written a letter back on December 9th to Cheryl Cooper Smith, and I included in that letter a number of pictures that my neighbor took when we went. There were several of us that went to Pearl River High School when the representatives from Dominican and the lighting company wanted to show us their lights. And my neighbor took pictures. These pictures were taken, they had to be over 500 feet away. They were from Oriole Street and East Central Avenue. And there is no way that you can tell me that these lights are not going to have a detrimental effect to everybody around this field. The light was so bright from the street. And then they're saying that this is going to be pointed down and it's not going to affect us. It's going to have a severe detrimental effect on this neighborhood, on my quality of life, my neighbor's quality of life. There are families with young children. There are people here that work around the clock. They call it a stadium in their YouTube video. Now they have also, prior to some of the meetings, they have also, John Burke, I believe, was the one that mentioned about summer camps. So them talking about how it's only going to be used certain amount of times, all summer, this is going to be used by camps. They said people have reached out to them. They have rented fields for their lacrosse fields. They know how much money they pay. They know how much money that they're going to take in. They keep mentioning just the men's sports, but really it's going to be twice that amount because there are the women's sports, and not to mention the speakers that they have in the press box. That is pointing directly to the neighbors to the west. And I don't know why they're putting in a track if they're not having any track events. I mean, they talk about just the games. They're going to be back there practicing all the time. This is going to be a 24, well, not 24/7, but this will be from 8 to 11 every 7 days a week.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes.
Thank you all so much.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have Raina Park. Next.
Hi, my name is Rana Park. I'm at 43 Carlton Road. So I think Vanessa Lapin addressed this issue, as did the woman that spoke before me. But when they were explaining their plans, it seems like they were evading a lot of questions and being really ambiguous. There was a question addressed to the gentleman about rental, how many times, who are they going to rent it to? And he kind of said, hey, there's a lady that was interested, Manhattan Soccer Club might be. And so I know that it seems like there is a plan in place to, are they incentivized to make rental income to, finance this project? I would like more transparency in terms of how they are going to budget this, because that's going to give us an idea of what their plans really are. They're giving us very vague answers about the number of teams and the games that are going to be played. But yes, I know that Dominican College does host summer camps for our community, which is great. But that means that when they have a field with much more capabilities and many more hours of usage at night, that's going to increase their rental possibilities as well. So if the Dominican College can come back to us and answer these questions in terms of what are their plans to finance this project? And do they depend on this rental income to do that? And how much rental income are they expecting? That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Angela Badillo.
Hi, my name is Angela Badillo, and I'm at 67 Chestnut Oval. So we're on the west side of the project. And basically, as all the neighbors have stated, we agree with everything. We're very much against the project. It's going to completely change our quality of life here. And I don't think it's just, a little noise on the weekend or once a month or here and there. It virtually sounds like it's going to be every day that we're going to be affected by this, with lights, with noise. And we want to stay here. We've been here for 30 years, but maybe one day we won't stay here, or we won't be wanting to live in this environment, and the property values are just going to completely go down. Because if I was 30 years ago and I saw a stadium in a backyard, I wouldn't take a second glance at the house. That would just be it. And I also have my son here, Andrew, and he has a different perspective. So he's going to just chime in for a minute.
Hi, everyone. Love the perspective from all the neighbors. I think we're all on agreement. I have a different perspective. I actually covered local college and high school sports for the past 3 years up in Bangor, Maine. And there were multiple Division III schools up there with similar turf complexes that Dominican College aspires to have. And I can just say from my experience being at games, practices, camps, and clinics all year round, 24/7, similar to what Pat McNamee said, this is going to be an operation, and encompassing the ambiguity from Dominican College tonight with how often they're going to rent, how often they're going to practice and play, and how long that's going to be during the calendar year. This seems like a project that really is going to diminish the quality of life for the neighbors of this town, of this street, as well as Chestnut Oval and Carlton as well. Because from my experience covering sports up in Maine, at a complex like this, you're going to have things running from 7 in the morning up until 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night from January. And this is in Maine, from January when the ground is frozen, from January all the way through to December. So again, I enjoy the perspective from everyone, and I think we're all on the same page here. Thank you for the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have Jake. There's no last name. So Jake, can you please introduce yourself and your address?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jake from 34 Parkway Drive South. My whole thing is I just found out about this tonight. It would have been nice to have been informed. It's kind of upsetting that the town didn't feel the need to tell people in the neighborhood about this. And I feel like you guys aren't really listening to our problems. You're just going to pass this anyway. I mean, that's it. I'm keeping it short.
Mr. Chairman, I have nobody else that is typed into the chat that they want to speak. Is anybody else out there that would like to address the board?
One more time, anybody from the public wish to address the board on this application? Already spoken, sir.
Brian.
I'm sorry, you're already spoken, sir. We're going.
So I guess we already spoke.
Yes, you've already spoken. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Being nobody else wishes. Looking for a motion to close the public.
I'll make a motion.
Who's that? Mr. Bond. Do I have a second?
Mr. Andrews, seconds.
Mr. Andrews, second. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition to closing the public session? Okay. Public session is closed. Mr. Quinn, as you can hear from the board and also from the abutting neighbors and the townsfolk, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. And that, as of right now, I feel that the board is really not comfortable with what's going on. I'm only speaking for myself. I don't know. I'll ask the rest of the board what their opinion is. But, I think they're kind of looking for you to ask for a continuation. But let me go through the board members and see what they say first. Okay. Mr. Young.
I'm in agreement, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mandel.
I'm in agreement, and I'd like a full environmental impact study when they come back.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sweeney has accused himself. Okay, Mr. Dell.
I agree with Mr. Mandel. I think it's good that we have a continuation. I think we need answers, but I certainly agree we should have a long EAF on this because this is a substantial impact on the surrounding areas. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Andrews.
I think they should ask for a continuance. I think their presentation lacks a lot of our questions, answers. I would like them to come back with answers to those questions and a much better presentation.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. McClory.
Yes, Chairman. Like I stated several times, I got a lot of problems with this plan as presented tonight. A lot of quality of life issues they need to address when they come back and come up with a better plan that has less impact on the neighbors. So I agree that this plan tonight is no good for me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bond.
Yeah, I agree with the request for continuance, and maybe they can try and incorporate some of the suggestions tonight into maybe trying to lessen the impact on the surrounding community, maybe eliminating the track, moving the field. There are a lot of suggestions out there, so you need to ask for continuance and figure out what you're going to do and come back. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Quinn.
Yes. Well, let me just say that I fully expected, and one of the reasons why we came to this meeting was we wanted to hear from the board members and we wanted to hear from the public. I'm glad to see that several members of the public spoke well of Dominican College, and I like to think that for many, many years, the college has been a good neighbor. And we want to continue to be a good neighbor. And, you know, the sisters have owned this property for, 150 years at this point. The school opened in 1952. The existing field has existed for over 40 years. It needs upgrades. Anybody who, can look at the field can see that it's in bad shape. It's not even comparable with high school fields that are out there. And so when they have students come to the school, what must be their reaction when they see their field and that it isn't up to some local high school fields? We came tonight to listen to our neighbors' concerns, and in return, we hope that the neighbors will listen to us and consider the college's concerns and needs. Colleges are under tremendous stress right now because of COVID. Teaching remotely, people are taking classes online. There's a lot of concern that this could all result in why do I need to pay to go to college? I could just attend classes online, and we don't need college campuses anymore. Dominican College is an important part of our community in Orangetown. They contribute significantly to the local economy, not just in a monetary way, but in the many employees of the college who live in Orangetown. They pay payroll taxes. They buy supplies. They have food service. They provide generous financial aid to local students. They take pride in the fact that many of their students are the first in their families to attend college. It really is a resource for the town and for the county and for the state of New York. Importantly, the college needs to stay financially viable. Now, one thing that I've learned over 40 years of doing land use, many, many years here in Orangetown, is nobody likes change. I totally understand that. But if this college was not to survive, if it did not continue, what other use would this property be put to? We've already seen a local college close and be sold. And it has raised a lot of concerns, both with the immediate neighbors, as well as the entire town of Orangetown and the county of Rockland, honestly. There could be a lot worse changes, and I think everybody would be concerned about that. However, having said all that, I took extensive notes. I'm sorry, I did try to keep track of all of the board members' comments and respond to them. We will go back. We are going to consider every comment and every statement that was made, both by the board members and by the public at large. We appreciate everybody's comments. The college wants to remain a good neighbor for both the immediate neighbors and our town and county as well, too. So, yes, we would respectfully request a continuance, and we're going to see what we can do to address the concerns that we heard this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Okay, Mr. Dell.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I feel very strongly, as once in a while I've expressed to you, in terms of the board being perceived as doing its due diligence, if nothing else, that we should definitely ask for the long form EAF. A short form, I think, is inappropriate for this. And without that, I have a great deal of difficulties going forward. Perhaps you could pull the board and see if they also agree with me. Because remember, when we have litigation, etc., which sometimes happens, it's always best to be on the side of caution. And I don't think having a long form would be a problem. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Quinn, do you have any objection to that?
No, I do not. We could submit a long form EAF.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Do any of the other board members have any questions? I think we've kind of covered everything, and I think Mr. Quinn knows where the board is and where the neighbors are, and that hopefully they work out something very, amiable for everybody. Okay.
We're going to try.
Mr. Chairman,
We're going to try. Thank you
Very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If they're coming back, I think Mr. McCrory brought up the issues about the landscaping. I think they should come back with a full landscaping plan that shows the trees that they're going to plant on the south side and the west side, what trees are going to be removed, the size, the types of tree, detailed plan, rather than what they've given so far.
Okay, Mr. Quinn, any problem with that, sir?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other board members have any questions? Yes, Mr. Dell. Turn your microphone on so we can hear you.
Yes, I would strongly suggest the applicant consider looking at using retaining walls to give additional privacy and to save additional trees. That's in addition to the other comments I made. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, I'd like to thank everybody for being patient with the procedure this evening. There was a lot of people on this meeting, and everyone got an opportunity to speak that wanted to have it without talking over each other, and I appreciate everybody's patience.
I would like to second that. We've had other meetings where we've had people who weren't quite as nice, and I think everybody was extremely respectful, and I appreciate you and thank you for your due diligence. We're all trying to do the right thing, and I think everybody sees that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Cheryl.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Dell. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I would just like to say that I personally appreciate the way you conduct the meetings. Everyone gets to be heard. It's in a nice, respectful tone, non-adversarial, and it makes the whole proceedings a lot more efficient. So thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. Okay. Cheryl, is there anything else? Because I think we're about to close the meeting. Your mic's off, Cheryl. There you go.
No decisions this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Mr. Chair, would we
Yes,
be
sir.
placed on the next calendar? When would we be next heard so we can be prepared?
I think the best thing for you to do is give Cheryl Cooper Smith a call during the week and discuss the next calendar that you can get on. I think we should try to do the same thing as have this on as a single item, because I know that the neighborhood is very concerned over this. So there may be, additional people that wish to speak. So I don't know what the schedule will be.
Most likely sometime in March.
Right. Brian, a lot of it's going to hinge upon your team getting the information together and your presentation back to us, because it has to be circulated. So
yes,
Cheryl and I will work with you to finalize the date.
Thank you. I know you will, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Bond makes a motion to close the meeting. Do I have a second?
Andrew seconds.
Seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No opposition. Thank you all for being ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it, and see you all next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.